Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Mr. Pandaria dungeon guide. This dungeon guide is going to be focusing on the Temple of the Jade Serpent heroic mode. If you would like to skip to one of the bosses in this dungeon, then please feel free to use the annotations that are going to be on the screen for the first 20 seconds of this video. The first boss in this encounter goes by the name of Wise Mari, and he is one of the more fishier people you'll probably meet in Pandaria. Now this fight has two stages, and first of all we're going to take a look at a list of the abilities that this boss has, and then we're going to take a look at how to actually beat the encounter. It's a relatively simple encounter, however there is a lot of room for error if you're not careful of what you're doing. The first part of this encounter is stage 1, and for this stage Wise Mari is actually immune to all of your attacks. He puts this ability called Water Bubble around himself, and you can only get to stage 2 obviously by completing the first, I think it's, you have to kill 4 adds in phase 1. Now he has 4 abilities in phase 1, and the first one is Corrupted Waters. This carries on into phase 2 as well, and all it means is don't stand in the water basically. It's crazy, I know, but standing in the water will inflict 20,000 shadow damage every quarter of a second to you, and that's a lot of damage, and you don't want to be making your healers mad. One of his other skills is called Hydro Lance, and throughout the video part of this section you'll see the water randomly turning black and then exploding. This is the Hydro Lance ability, and if anyone is standing near it while it's rippling or exploding, it'll deal 45,000 damage to them. Doesn't seem like much, but if all of you are standing in the wrong place, that's like 200,000 damage that the healer's got to heal. And the boss's last ability in this first phase is called Cold Water. Now around the room there are 4 small fountains, and the Cold Water ability is the ad that spawns, and you need to kill 4 of these in order to advance into phase 2. Now, Wise Mari will randomly spawn these throughout the encounter. They won't all come at once, they'll just come one by one. Now, when you kill one of these waters, it will split into 3 things called Corrupt Droplets, which are like little black blobs that move along the floor. And these are smaller and weaker than the normal ones, and these just attack random players. Now, once you've killed these off, they will leave a puddle of crap on the floor basically, which will inflict 17,500 frost damage to anyone that's standing in that. Now if you've got 3 of them stacked on top of each other because you've AoE killed them down, and someone stands on that, they're going to be taking, what, 54,000 damage every second? You don't want to stand in it. It's a pretty obvious thing to see on the floor. Don't be that guy that the healer hates. And now moving on into stage 2 of the encounter, once you've killed off 4 of the adds that spawn, the boss only has 3 abilities down from, well, the many abilities that the adds had and what he was doing at the same time. And in this phase, well, it begins with Bubble Burst basically, and once you defeat the 4th ad, Mari's bubble will burst. It's like you've annoyed him and you've burst his bubble. That was a really bad pun, I apologise. And this will just inflict 50,000 frost damage, and it will knock back players as long as they're within 10 yards of Wise Mari. So when you kill the final ad, if you're standing, 12 yards away from him, you won't be hit by this, you won't get knocked back, or you won't get damaged. It's probably preference if you do stand further away from the boss. And then the other main ability in phase 2 is called Wash Away, and this is effectively a frontal cone ability on the boss. He's not actually tanked in this stage, and he will rotate clockwise around the circle that he's currently standing in, with this frontal cone in front of him, following him. If you remember back to the Throne of the Four Winds, it was the air boss on there. It's an ability very similar to the one that he had, that you just had to dodge and run away from. It's very simple, however, there's a good old catch-22 here, because you have to run around the circle in order to avoid it. Now you can see that there are gaps in between the outer circle which have water flowing through them, and if you remember back to phase 1, standing in the water is bad, so you will take a little bit of damage unless you're really good at jumping or have like sprinting abilities. So it's technically a really healer intensive stage, but not if the players do it right. For example, you're able to jump the majority of the water, and it is preference. I know you'll probably join this group through looking for dungeon or something along those lines, but having classes that have abilities where you can run, such as mages casting Scorch, and also for once melee classes have a use in something. It's just a lot easier because obviously if you have to stand still in order to cast at the boss, there's a chance you'll get hit by his frontal cone, and that deals like 150,000 damage. You're gonna have a bad time. The second boss in this dungeon is based in a library, so for all you bookworms out there, I'm sure you're going to love this encounter. Now, this encounter can be one of two fights, and the first fight we're going to look at is the trial of the Yaungol, or Yaungol, or Yaungol, or however you want to pronounce it. And this is basically two mobs that will spawn, and you have to kill them off in a bit of an odd fashion, really. If you were to face the trial of the Yaungol, you will be faced with two mobs that go by the name of Strife and Peril. Both of these mobs have the same abilities, and this in the long run does make the encounter a lot more easier for you to follow. Strife and Peril's first ability is called Agony, and this will inflict 25,000 shadow damage to their enemy. Now, I believe this is going to be the tank only taking damage, since it says its enemy. I presume that would be the current target. Now, the second ability, and what you won't see us doing in this video very well, is called Intensity, and every time you attack either Strife or Peril, it will give them a stacking buff effectively, and that will increase their damage by 10% for every stack. When it reaches 10 stacks, the mob will become immune, and you're not able to damage it for 15 seconds, and that's what you'll see us doing in this video. And then when it's become immune, you switch to the other mob, and this is when the third ability, Dissipation, comes into play, because if you don't attack one of the mobs, it will quote unquote starve the entity, which will slowly dissipate it into nothingness, and this will reduce its damage dealt by 10%. So if you don't attack a boss, it'll deal less damage. If you attack a boss, it'll deal more damage. Now, what I'm presuming you're meant to do is attack a boss until it gets to 8 stacks roughly, and then you swap so that the stacks on the first boss go down, and then the stacks on the second boss go up. And then you just interchange like that, and don't make any of the bosses go immune. However, this might be a problem if you do have AoE dealers in your group, such as fire mages, warlocks, and pretty much any class really. I mean, even melee with cleave could cause the intensity stacks to rise. All in all, the trial of the Yaungol is a really simple target switching fight. Basically, when one boss becomes immune, you just switch to the second boss, and when the second boss becomes immune, you should be able to switch back to the first boss. Simple as, really. The other encounter that you could face on the second boss in this dungeon is the Champion of the Five Suns. And this is a two-phase fight, and just like the first boss you could face, Strife and Peril, it's a relatively simple fight, really. The first phase of this fight involves two mobs. The first mob is Sun, and these are little orbs that you'll see flying around the room or the area that you're standing in, and these will deal 10,000 fire damage randomly to players. Now, this may not seem like much, but when you've got quite a few suns up, they will deal quite a bit of damage to people, especially if they focus fire just the one person. Now, when you kill these sun orbs, they will spawn a mob called the Haunting Sha, and these have an ability called Haunting Gaze, and this will deal 23,000 shadow damage to whoever it's targeting, and these will also attack Lawwalker Stone Step as well as the people that are in the group. When you've defeated enough Haunting Sha, you will then enter stage 2, and this is where the Sha will actually possess Zhao Sunseeker, who is like the main boss guy that will be there, not Lawwalker Stone Step. He will start firing these random hellfire arrows at you, and these will inflict 25,000 fire damage to random people. Now, that's quite a bit of damage, so the healers have got to be wary because it is going to random people, so it could go to the tank, and then if the boss is to hit the tank, it could end in a bit of a disaster, really, especially if they take a lot of spiky damage. But just like Strife and Peril, this part of the encounter is also relatively simple for people that are just in normal questing gear. The third boss in this dungeon goes by the name of Liu Flameheart, and please do criticise me if I pronounced her first name wrong. who is a martial arts master who has a little bit of a fiery side to her as well. This boss is a 3-phase encounter, and her 3 main abilities are shared between the first 2 phases, and then in the 3rd phase she turns into a fiery dragon of doom, pretty much. You should avoid fiery dragons of doom, they tend to try and hurt you. In the first phase, which is by the name of Serpent Dance for some reason, when she's not really a snake, but we'll avoid that, she has 3 abilities. The first one is called Serpent Strike, and this will strike a random target and inflict 75,000 fire damage to them, an additional 84,000 fire damage over 8 seconds. Now this is a magic ability, so the chances are it can be dispelled, so healers do look out for that. Then when she's performed her Serpent Strike, she'll perform her 2nd ability, which is called Serpent Kick, and this will inflict 90,000 fire damage to anyone that is standing within 8 yards of her. So basically when she's done the Serpent Strike, move away from her and you won't take any damage, otherwise you'll have healers frowning at you. Standard really. And then her 3rd ability is called Serpent Wave, which ties in with the Serpent Kick, because when she does kick, she creates 3 waves of fire around her, which will move out from her, lol Ragnaros, lol, and if you were to get hit by them, you'll take 75,000 fire damage. So basically don't get hit by the moving walls of fiery death. Then when Liu Flameheart reaches 70% health, all of those 3 abilities that she's just been using will become empowered with Jade, or something along those lines, I don't know, something crazy. And each of the 3 abilities will gain something else to add to its arsenal. So for example, for the Jade Serpent Strike, the person that gets hit by the strike will absorb up to 70,000 healing. So yeah, healers, you probably need to watch out for that one. For the Jade Serpent Kick, it's an additional knockback for all of the players that are standing within 8 yards, as well as the damage. And then for the Jade Serpent Wave, the fire pillars of doom that move out will leave a trail of fire on the floor behind them, and as you probably know from standard World of Warcraft knowledge, standing in the fire is bad, no matter if it's a dungeon raid or just a walk through, I don't know, one of the zones. And then for the grand finale, when Liu Flameheart reaches 30% health, she will enter some kind of crazy trance which makes her invulnerable, and she will also summon a spirit of Yulon. Now Yulon is a big ass dragon, and he will fire this ability called Jade Fire at you, and these will be fired at random players. When they reach the location of that player, they'll inflict 75,000 fire damage every second to players that are standing within the flames. Now that's only the ability the boss has. Now I'm not sure if Liu Flameheart continues with her 3 Jade abilities, because it did sometimes and it didn't sometimes when this dungeon was in early testing stages, so that unfortunately is something you're going to have to just check out for yourselves. And finally, the 4th and final boss in this dungeon goes by the name of the Sha of Doubt, and insert stupid pun time, I doubt you will kill this boss the first time round if you are to pug it, as it has very simple mechanics. Now this boss is, like I've said, relatively simple, and he's got 3 core abilities. However, one of the abilities is a recipe for disaster, because if people don't do their job properly, the chances are the boss is just going to regain all his health, and then you're just going to end up wiping because healers will run out of mana, or people will just get bored and leave, basically. Now his first ability goes by the name of Wither Will, and this is a very basic attack. All it does is inflicts 50,000 shadow damage to 2 random players. Very, very simple. His second ability is called Touch of Nothingness, which is a dot that he puts on people, and is obviously a magic ability which can be dispelled, and this will cause 30,000 shadow damage to nearby people every 2 seconds. So this will be on one person, and it will damage people that are standing around that one person. So you want this dispelled as soon as possible, or for people to kind of just stay spread out for this part. And this third ability is where it can all go wrong, basically. This is called Figments of Doubt, and this is where the Sha of Doubt creates a replica of everyone that's in the raid group, and this replica will focus on the person it was created of. So for example, I have one of me, the tank will have one of him, the healer will have one of him, etc. And what this will do is every time it's close to you or near you, it will siphon energy from you, and when it gets a full energy bar, which is obviously 100%, it will explode, inflict 75,000 shadow damage to you, and it will also heal the Sha of Doubt for 10% of its total health. Now, just picture this in your mind. The boss is at 10%, and then someone messes up, and then suddenly it's at 20%. Someone messes up again, 30%. It's just like a never-ending chain of disaster could occur. However, there is a method to this madness. If you want to defeat this boss, all you have to do is stack up. It sounds crazy, but if you just pick a place or a person you're going to stack up on, and then do lots and lots of AoE damage, the Figments of Doubt will die, the boss will not get any extra health, you will then kill the boss and gain epic loot. Well, it's not epic loot, it's blue loot, but that's not the point. The point is, it's a really simple mechanic, it's got a really simple method to beating the mechanic, just people can probably mess it up, and they will mess it up. Now, I have gone through all of the boss's abilities, however, just so you can see how he handled the fight, I'm going to let the rest of the encounter play, so you can just see how we take care of the Figments of Doubt, and also how we spread out. I mean, spreading out's not hard, you can do that yourselves, it's one of the simplest things to do in the game. And then at the end of the video, there will be a little outro for you to go to other videos of mine. Now, ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately we've arrived at the end of the video. However, with the knowledge I have given you, you should be able to defeat this dungeon on heroic mode with no problems whatsoever. Now, on the screen you can see a list of all of the dungeons that are being released with Mr. Pandaria in heroic mode. If you want to look at the guides for any of those other dungeons, obviously when I've uploaded them, just ignore that, that's the small print, then you can check this video or any of the other dungeon videos and click on those links, because they will be annotations put in place. Alternatively, if you go to my channel, on the main channel page at the bottom, there will now be a playlist for the World of Warcraft dungeon guides. So you can find all of the guide needs right there for you. And there's also a nice little subscribe button there. If this guide has helped you, or any of my other videos have helped you, then please do feel free to click it. I like people that do that. Thank you for watching.